Hi, page turners, Katja here, and I'm thrilled to share with you my top 15 books of 2024. Now, this year has been nothing short of spectacular. I managed to read 141 books, which I feel like was too much. Definitely talked about narrowing things down. And talking of narrowing it down, trying to get my favorites to 15 was not easy, but these are the ones that stood out to me. Now, whether you love cozy fantasy, sharp nonfiction, poignant memoirs, gripping mysteries, I hope there's something for everyone here. But a quick note before we dive in, ranking these is based on personal impact because how could I possibly compare the brilliance of a quiet memoir with a, galloping away with you fast adventure fantasy? It's pretty impossible. With that in mind, let's dive into number 15, The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. Now, this is cozy fantasy at its best. It's an enchanting novel following Tao, a wandering fortune teller who specializes in predicting small fortunes. And she avoids making these heavy, life altering prophecies because of the consequences. Admittedly, the book has a really slow start. For me, it did. It, however, quickly charmed its way into my heart. Tao is a complex, well-developed character, and the supporting cast steals the show. We've got a sassy scene-stealing cat, Sunny Baker, reformed thief, and a gruff mercenary, all adding humor and warmth. And what stood out for me is the themes of found family and immigrant experience. Tao is grappling with her mother's decision to move them to a country where they're often seen as outsiders, really struck a chord for me. Now, if you're looking for a fantasy that's heartwarming, thought provoking, and interspersed with light-hearted moments, this is a must read, especially if you're into fantasy. Now, Doppelganger, A Trip into the Mirror World by Naomi Klein, a totally different feel, sharp nonfiction, completely hooked me. Naomi Klein explores the idea of doppelgangers, both literal and metaphorical, to unpack identity, personal branding, and how we're mirrored and distorted in today's polarized, performative digital age. What impressed me most was how Klein ties together seemingly unrelated topics: technology, societal division, and online culture all into one cohesive narrative. It's the kind of book that makes you pause every few pages to sit with the big questions. How do we see ourselves? How does the world see us? And how much of that is filtered through our hyper digital society? For anyone curious about how the digital world shapes identity and perception, it's a timely, thought provoking read. Then we get on to Fingerbone by Hiroki Takahashi and translated by Takami Niida. Now, this one is very different from my usual. It's a haunting World War II novel that's raw, visceral, unforgettable, following a young Japanese soldier barely out of high school sent to the unforgiving terrain of New Guinea. He faces disease, starvation, and the crushing mental toll of survival amidst wartime skirmishes. What sets this book apart is how it weaves moments of humanity into the chaos, fleeting connections with local villagers caught between Japanese and Allied forces, and small acts of kindness all remind us of our shared vulnerabilities. That said, the book doesn't shy away from the brutality of conflict. It lays bare the true cost of war and the fragility of humanity in stark, unflinching prose. But if you appreciated books like At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop, this could be your next read. It's very much about the human condition as well as the horrors of war. Then we have Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This is definitely a way of lightening things up with a quirky fantasy romance. And these are the sort of books that I read after heavier reads. I always love a good palate cleanser, a book that lifts your spirits and keeps you smiling. So enter Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, equal parts humor, heart, and adventure. And the story tells us about Hala, a no-nonsense woman who accidentally awakens Sarkis, a grumpy warrior trapped in a magical sword. Their journey is packed with sharp banter, genuine affection, and Kingfisher's signature wit. Hala's practicality is the perfect foil to Starkus's stoicism, and their dynamics is the beating heart of the book. Richly textured world building, charm, delightful touches with bureaucratic humor in the form of The Temple of the White Rat. It is so clever and entertaining. Then from whimsical fantasy, we jump into a fierce feminist classic, bold and timeless. This is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. It is gripping, character-driven, boldly challenges societal norms and hypocrisy as we get to know Helen Graham, a fiercely independent woman, moving to the secluded Wildfell Hall with her young son and sparking gossip and intrigue. Bronte tackled themes like domestic abuse, addiction, and the suffocating constraints placed on women in a patriarchal society. Helen's resilience makes her one of the most compelling heroines in classic literature, and the dual narrative between her, her diary, and Gilbert Markham's perspective adds depth and keeps attention quite high. So Bronte's emotionally charged writing is layered with biting social critique, making this a must-read for fans of classics with grit and heart. It's officially my favorite Bronte novel. Now let's move from the 19th century to a modern environmental issue with a nonfiction book that completely surprised me. It is Crossings: How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet by Ben Goldfarb, tackling an often overlooked environmental issue: how roads disrupt ecosystems. And this book turns it into a fascinating deep dive into infrastructure and ecology, exploring how roads fragment habitats, disrupt migrations, and even alter breeding patterns. And it stands out in its focus on solutions, from wildlife corridors to amphibian tunnels. This is highlighting creative work by conservationists striving to restore balance between human infrastructure and the natural world. And it was spellbinding. It's not just about roadkill, it's about rethinking how we build things and prioritize coexistence with nature. So it was so engrossing and explored with such passion. Then onto a novel that captures gender inequality in the 1950s and 60s in America. It's a book with a lot of heart. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Now, Elizabeth Zott is one of the most unforgettable characters who stays with you long after the final page. A brilliant chemist fighting for her rights in 1950s America, defying societal norms with resilience, wit, and just so much heart. This book was a brilliant read for my book club. It strikes a perfect balance between humor and biting social commentary. And yeah, like I say, the book club had such great discussions about gender roles, systemic barriers, and perseverance. And Elizabeth's struggles are real and relatable, and her triumphs are so satisfying. So between laugh out loud moments and sobering truths, Lessons in Chemistry inspires and entertains in equal measure. Then we head into 17th century Japan with a deeply contemplative historical novel from Shusaku Endo. It follows Hasekuru, a low-ranking samurai sent on a diplomatic mission to the West to secure trade relations for Japan. The story is imagined, but the vivid writing makes us feel grounded in history, taking us from the rice fields of Japan to the glittering courts of Spain. And at its heart, we have a samurai whose complex relationship with a Jesuit priest, Father Velasco, really highlights the clash of religious fervor and a samurai's duties. It's a reflective exploration of faith, cultural identity, and resilience woven with philosophy and history. For fans of literary historical fiction, or if you liked Endo's book Silence, this is an understated, thoughtful masterpiece. And also, for me, the plus side was it's less visceral than Silence. Tombland by C.J. Sansom at over 800 pages. It is a sprawling Tudor mystery combining gripping intrigue with a vivid portrayal of England's 1549 Kett's Rebellion. Lawyer Shardlake investigates a murder, drawing him deep into the heart of the rebellion, and Sansom's meticulous research into history brings 16th century England to life. immersing us in the era's sights, sounds, and tensions. The themes of justice, power, and inequality resonate beyond their historical context, making the story feel both timely and timeless. And Shardlake's compassion and sense of fairness make him a compelling lens through which we see the rebellion's human cost. It is historical fiction at its best, immersive, thought-provoking, and utterly gripping. Then we have The Lantern of Lost Memories by Sanaka Hiragi and translated by Jessie Kirkwood. Beautifully poignant novel taking us to a magical photography studio existing between life and death. And we follow three individuals, an elderly woman, a yakuza, and a young girl, revisiting cherished memories to confront unresolved emotions. Hiragi's exploration of love, loss, and connection feels both ethereal and deeply human, and the final story left me in tears. Kirkwood's translation captures a delicate balance of Hiragi's storytelling, making this a quiet masterpiece for fans of heartwarming yet bittersweet narratives. And while I expected the usual cozy Japanese fiction, this book offered more. It doesn't shy away from trauma. There are definitely from me trigger warnings for abuse. It handles these themes, however, with grace. By the end of it, I felt a sense of relief, not heaviness. Now we get to book 5, a memoir of my former self, A Life in Writing by Hilary Mantel, the final work of a legendary author, a collection of her essays spanning 4 decades. Some of them will feel dated because it is for 4 decades, but each piece offers a window into her writing process, historical fascinations, and personal reflections. Mantel's words are rich with meaning, inviting slow and careful contemplation. Whether she's discussing history or her own experiences, her insights are both challenging and thought-provoking, and I found her reflections on her health particularly resonant for me because I share a lot of the things she talks about, including severe endometriosis. Her discussion of its impact on her body, weight, and life choices echoed my experiences, including infertility, and I have frozen pelvis, a result of severe scarring and adhesions that cause chronic pain and complications. Even if the personal reflections don't sort of hit home for you the way that they did for me, it remains a poignant farewell from one of literature's greats, inviting readers to reflect on the art of storytelling and the human experience. Then we go on to fantasy. If you're looking for an inventive blend of fantasy and mystery, The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett is an absolute must-read. The first book in a series, it's set in the world shaped by magical contagions and the blood of leviathans. We follow Anna Delra, a brilliant but eccentric detective, and her loyal assistant Den as they investigate the bizarre death of a high-ranking imperial officer. The narrative is as much about Den's growth and his evolving relationship with Anna as it is about solving the mystery. And what sets this book apart for me is a spectacular world building, blending plot punk aesthetic with intricate political intrigue. Bennett crafts a smart, immersive, unforgettable tale, LGBTQ plus romance, hints of it, and a character-driven narrative. It was beautiful. Black Box by Shiori Ito, translated by Alison Markin. This is a harrowing memoir casting an unflinching light on Japan's cultural and legal responses to sexual assault. Ito's clear, measured prose lays bare the systemic failures survivors face, from victim blaming to bureaucratic indifference. Refusing to accept her case as a black box, Ito's perseverance led to historic victories, including the 2019 damages awarded in court and the 2023 reform of Japan's century-old sex crime laws. These changes redefined consent and increased protections for survivors, underscoring the profound societal impact of her fight. So Black Box is not just a personal account, it's a rallying cry for systemic change. It challenges us to confront biases and reminds us that the shame lies not with survivors but with the perpetrators. And this very much echoes the recent news in France with Giselle Pellicot, who also reminds us about the shame lying with the perpetrators. James by Percival Everett. a subversive retelling of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, centering on Jim reclaiming his story through a bold and transformative lens. Everett reimagines him, and James comes to life exploring themes of language, identity, and liberation. Everett critiques the original text while amplifying its potential for introspection. This is more than a retelling, it's a profound meditation on race, survival, and self definition. For fans of literary fiction, this book challenges conventions, and James is provocative and so rewarding. Now, before I reveal my number one pick, here are three incredible books from different genres that almost made it onto my list, and they would have done if it was a top 24 of 2024. They are What You Are Looking For is in the Library by Michiko Ayoma, a heartwarming collection of stories set in a Tokyo library with an enigmatic librarian, helping individuals rediscover themselves through the transformative power of books. Then we have Homegoing by Ya Gyasi, a multi-generational saga tracing two half-sisters and their descendants across centuries, offering a powerful exploration of slavery, colonialism, and resilience. Nine Continents by Zhao Lu Guo. Now, this is a deeply introspective journey from a remote Chinese village to becoming an acclaimed writer, layered with cultural and generational complexities. So the only reason that I didn't include these three books in the top 15 for me is because of their episodic nature, which left me wanting more for certain bits of the story that moved on before I was done. So for Ayoma's book, that's very much to do with the common story structure for Japanese fiction of having several individual stories connected by a common element, in this case, the librarian. For Homegoing, we followed different descendants, and I sometimes felt very attached to a character and wasn't ready for their chapter to be over, but I had to sort of let them go and move on to a next character, a next chapter. In Nine Continents, the flow of time is less linear, but nonetheless, as we dip in and out of the author's life, there were events that I wasn't ready to move on from when we actually did, and I had to let that go. So those are the reasons. Now for my number one. It is Love in the Big City by Sang Young Park and translated by Anton Her. Hands down my favorite book of 2024, which surprises me because I left it sitting on my shelf for over 2 years or more. Through the eyes of Young, a gay man navigating love and life and soul, the novel captures the beauty, chaos, and heartbreak of human connection. Told in vivid vignettes, we follow Young's carefree student days, rocky relationships, and complicated bond with his ultra-religious mother. His voice is sharp, vulnerable, and deeply relatable, blending humor with moments that tug at your heartstrings. And Anton Her's translation shines, preserving the nuance and emotion in every scene. This book feels like a universal reflection on identity, love, and resilience. Even as it delves into the specifics of modern urban life, it's the kind of story that lingers, reminding us of the bittersweet complexity of our relationships and the search for meaning. So, if you're looking for a vibrant, unforgettable read, Love in the Big City is a must, and I think that it is underrated on Goodreads, being under 4 stars. That's just, for me, not fair. But anyway, that's the way things go. And that wraps up my top 15 books of 2024, books that left a lasting impression. And let me know, did anything strike you? Are you adding one of these onto your TBR for 2025? Are they like, nope, I read them and I don't agree, they shouldn't be on the list? Let me know what you think. And do you have recommendations for 2025 for my reading? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that jazz, and thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.